Imagine a book so dangerous that for over 1,000 years kings and conquerors have tried to destroy it. A book so powerful, its words were considered a threat to entire empires. This isn't a work of fiction. This is the story of a real book, written in secret, under the shadow of an invading force that sought to erase a civilization from the face of the earth. The author spent 30 years of his life, in poverty and isolation, crafting 60,000 verses to save the soul of his nation. He succeeded. He created a masterpiece that would define his people for a millennium. But his reward was exile, and a death in obscurity. So what was written in this book? What secret knowledge, what epic tales, what dangerous ideas did it contain that made the most powerful rulers in history tremble? And why was its creator, a man who single-handedly saved the memory of his people, cast out and forgotten? That is the mystery we are going to unravel. This is the story of the Shahnameh, the Book of Kings. To understand why this book had to be written, you have to understand the world it was born into. Imagine the United States with all its history, its language, its culture suddenly conquered. The invaders declare that English is a forbidden language. The stories of Washington, Lincoln, the Revolution, the Civil War, all of it is to be forgotten, replaced by a new history, a new language, a new God. Your identity is being systematically erased. This was the reality for the Persian people in the 7th century. The mighty Sasanian Empire, a rival to Rome for centuries, had fallen to the Arab conquests. A new order was established. The ancient Zoroastrian religion was suppressed, and the Persian language, with its rich poetic tradition, was being pushed to the brink of extinction by the new official language, Arabic. For 200 years it seemed like the memory of ancient Persia, of Cyrus the Great, of Darius, of 1,000 years of kings and heroes, would be lost forever, a footnote in someone else's history. But embers of that old world still glowed. In scattered villages and hidden courts, fragments of old stories were still told in secret. Tales of mythical beasts, godlike champions, and the first kings who tamed the world. Someone needed to gather these embers before they went out for good. Someone needed to forge them into an eternal flame. That man was named Ferdowsi. He was not a king or a general. He was a landowner, a poet living in the eastern province of Khorasan, far from the center of power. But he had access to a rare collection of these old chronicles. And he made a decision that would change the course of history. He would take on the monumental task of weaving every known Persian myth, legend, and historical account into a single colossal epic poem. A poem written entirely in the Persian language, a deliberate act of cultural defiance. He began his work around the year 977. He was already in his 40s. He would not finish it until he was nearly 80. For over 30 years he dedicated his life to this one task. He spent his entire fortune funding the project. As he wrote, he watched his country change, he watched his own wealth dwindle, but he never stopped. He was building an ark, not of wood but of words. An ark designed to carry the entire memory of his people across a flood of cultural annihilation. The book he created, the Shahnameh, is not just a collection of stories. It is the foundational myth of a nation. It's the Odyssey, the Aeneid, and the Book of Genesis all rolled into one. It begins, as all great epics do, at the very beginning. Not with a battle, but with the creation of the universe itself. In Ferdowsi's telling, God creates the world, and from this primordial light steps the first man and the first king, Kiamars. Kiamars is not a king who sits on a throne of gold. He is a king of the mountain. He lives in a cave dressed in the skins of leopards. He is the very embodiment of humanity in its infancy, raw, powerful, and at one with nature. He teaches mankind how to eat, how to dress, and how to live. For 30 years, his reign is a golden age of peace. All creatures, wild and tame, bow before him in reverence. But this perfect world contains a seed of darkness. This darkness has a name: Ahriman, the eternal embodiment of evil and lies. Ahriman looks upon the harmony of Kiamar's world with burning jealousy. He cannot stand the light, the order, the goodness, and so he unleashes his own creation, a monstrous sun, a terrifying black demon. This demon gathers an army of other foul creatures and marches on the world of men. The first war is not for territory or for treasure. It is a war between creation and destruction, between light and shadow. Kiamars has a son, a noble prince named Siamak. Brave and beloved, Siamak sees the threat of the black demon and raises the first human army to defend his father's kingdom. The battle is cataclysmic. Siamak, clad in a leopard skin tunic, charges at the black demon. But he is young, and this is a new kind of evil the world has never seen before. The demon, a creature of pure malice, overpowers the prince. He tears him apart with his bare hands. The first hero is dead. The golden age is over. The world is plunged into grief. The wails of sorrow reach from the mountains to the seas. For an entire year, Kiamars and his people mourn. The world has learned its first and cruelest lesson, that evil is real, and that the light can be extinguished. Seems as if Ahriman has won. But from that tragedy a new force is born: vengeance. Siamak had a son named Hushang. Filled with a burning desire to avenge his father, Hushang is raised by his grandfather Kiamars not just as a prince, but as a warrior. He gathers the armies of men and even the armies of the animal kingdom. Leopards, lions, wolves, and tigers march alongside his soldiers. He leads this unified force of nature against the demonic horde. This time humanity is not naive. This time they are driven by righteous fury. Hushang meets the black demon on the battlefield, the very monster who killed his father, and in a legendary clash, he defeats him, beheading the creature and scattering his army. Justice is delivered, but the world is forever changed. Kiamars, his life's purpose fulfilled, passes away, leaving the throne to his grandson. Hushang becomes the second king of the world, and it is under his reign that humanity takes its first great leap forward. One day, while hunting in the mountains, Hushang sees a monstrous black serpent. He hurls a stone at it, but the stone misses, striking a piece of flint instead. A spark ignites the dry grass. For the first time, humanity sees fire. They are terrified at first. They see it as a divine, terrifying force. But Hushang, whose name means wisdom, understands its potential. He teaches his people how to harness it, how to use it for warmth, for light, and crucially for metalworking. With fire, they can separate iron from rock. They forge the first axes, saws, and adzes. Civilization is born from this spark. Agriculture begins. Humanity is no longer just surviving nature. They are beginning to shape it. They are building a world of order and reason to hold back the chaos that lurks in the darkness. This is the central theme of the Shahnameh. The eternal struggle between Far, a divine glory or light representing order and wisdom, and the darkness of Ahriman, representing chaos and deceit. Every king, every hero is judged by their ability to uphold this divine light. Hushang's discovery of fire is not just a technological advance. It's a symbolic victory of light over the endless night. After a prosperous reign, Hushang passes the crown to his son, Timurus. Known as the Demon Binder, Timurus continues the fight against Ahriman's dark forces. He subjugates the demons, forcing many of them into his service. He learns their dark secrets, and in a stunning turn, he forces them to teach humanity a skill they had never known: the art of writing. From the ultimate evil, the greatest tool of knowledge is gained. It's a profound statement. Even from our darkest enemies, an element of progress can be wrestled. For 50 years, Timurus rules with wisdom, advancing civilization and keeping the forces of evil at bay. The world seems to be on a path towards an unbreakable golden age. But the Shahnameh is not a simple fairy tale. It is a story of cycles, of light, and the inevitable return of the shadow. And as Timurus's reign ends, a new king will rise. A king so glorious, so powerful, and so beloved, that his reign will be remembered as the pinnacle of human achievement. But his very greatness, his hubris, will sow the seeds of a catastrophe so terrible, it will unleash 1,000 years of horror upon the world. The greatest of all kings is about to make the greatest of all mistakes. For 700 years, King Jamshid sat upon a throne of pure light. He had conquered disease. He had banished death. He had taught humanity the arts of weaving, mining, and building. Under his rule, the world knew a peace so profound, a prosperity so complete, that work itself became a forgotten memory. His people lived in a paradise on earth, a golden age crafted by the hands of a perfect king. And every day, Jamshid would look out upon this flawless world he had created, and a dangerous thought began to take root in his mind. A thought born not of malice, but of an inescapable logic. He had defeated every enemy. He had solved every problem. He had given his people a life free from suffering. Who else could do such things? Who else could bend the very fabric of reality to their will? The priests offered prayers to a distant, unseen creator, but Jamshid saw the fruits of his own labor. his own genius everywhere he looked. The gratitude of his people, once a source of humility, now felt like a simple, obvious truth. He had given them everything. He was the source of all their blessings. The conclusion to him was simple. He was not just a king. He was a god. He summoned the nobles, the generals, and the wise men of his realm. He stood before them, not in his usual armor or royal robes, but in garments that shimmered like the sun itself. And in the great hall of his palace, a silence fell as he spoke the words that would shatter the world. He declared that he, Jamshid, was the sole creator of all their good fortune. It was his command that held back death and sickness. It was his will that made the earth fruitful. From this day forward, he commanded, they were to worship him not as a king, but as their divine maker. The reaction was not outrage. It was terror, a cold, silent dread that crept into the heart of every person present. They looked at their magnificent king, the man who had given them paradise, and for the first time they did not see a savior. They saw a man consumed by an ego so vast it sought to swallow heaven itself. And as they stared, something shifted. A light seemed to go out behind Jamshid's eyes. The divine glory, the fire that had blessed his reign and guaranteed his success, recoiled from his blasphemy. It abandoned him. And with it, the luck of the entire world turned. The kingdom didn't collapse overnight. It was a slow, creeping decay. The fruit from the trees tasted a little less sweet. The winters grew a little colder. Whispers of dissent, a concept unheard of for centuries, began to circulate in the perfect cities. The people's love for their king curdled into fear, and then into resentment. They saw his arrogance and they turned away. The world Jamshid had built was held together by divine favor, and he had just severed that connection with his own pride. The kingdom was now a hollow shell, a paradise rotting from the inside out, waiting for a monster to kick down the door. And far away in the deserts of Arabia, that monster was being born. His name was Zahak, the son of a good and generous king named Merdas. But where the father was content, the son was a coiled spring of ambition and resentment. He saw his father's kindness not as a virtue but as a weakness. He yearned for power, for a legacy that would eclipse all others. He was a man with a void in his soul, and into that void stepped evil itself. The great deceiver Ahriman, the lord of lies, saw the growing darkness in Zahak's heart and knew he had found his champion. He appeared to the young prince not as a demon, but as a friendly, charismatic courtier, a wise advisor who spoke the language of ambition. He praised Zahak's strength, his intelligence, his destiny for greatness. And he whispered a poisonous idea into his ear. Your father, he said, is old. He is weak. He stands in the way of your glorious future. The world is waiting for a true ruler, a man of action and power, a man like you. Why wait for him to die when destiny calls to you now? At first Zahak resisted. To kill one's own father was the ultimate sin, an unthinkable crime. But Ahriman was patient. Day after day he chipped away at Zahak's conscience, painting visions of glory, of a world kneeling at his feet. He convinced Zahak that this act of murder was not a sin, but a sacrifice, a necessary step on the path to greatness. Finally, the prince's ambition overwhelmed his love. He agreed. Ahriman devised the plan. A deep pit, covered with leaves and branches, dug along a path the old king walked every morning for his prayers. That night, Zahak watched as his own father, a good man who loved him, fell to his death in the darkness. And as the first rays of dawn touched the desert, Zahak placed his father's crown upon his own head. He had committed the ultimate evil, and his pact with the devil was sealed. Ahriman, his first task complete, now changed his disguise. He reappeared in Zahak's court as a young, brilliant chef, a master of the culinary arts. Until this time, humanity had eaten simple food, fruits and herbs. But this new chef introduced a decadent, intoxicating new cuisine, the flesh of animals. He prepared magnificent feasts for the new king, dishes of such exquisite flavor that Zahak was enthralled. He had never known such pleasure. The chef, he declared, was a genius. He would grant him any reward he desired. The chef, with a humble bow, made a simple request. He asked for nothing more than the honor of kissing the king's bare shoulders, as a sign of his deep respect and loyalty. Amused by the strange request, Zahak agreed. He removed his robes and the chef stepped forward. He placed one kiss on Zahak's right shoulder and another on his left. and then he vanished into thin air. In his place, a horror bloomed. From the exact spots where the demon had kissed him, two writhing black serpents erupted from Zahak's flesh. They were part of him, growing from his own body, hissing and snapping at the air. In a panic, Zahak ordered his physicians to cut them off. But as soon as the blades sliced through their flesh, two more grew back instantly, more aggressive and more monstrous than before. They were a part of him now, an eternal living mark of his sin. The court was in chaos. The king was a monster. As Zahak despaired, Ahriman returned, this time disguised as a learned physician. He examined the terrible growths and gravely informed the king that there was no cure. The serpents could not be removed, but he said they could be managed. They could be kept calm. They had a specific hunger, a specific diet that must be met every single day. They fed on human brains. This was the final stage of Zahak's damnation. To survive, he now had to murder his own subjects. Every day, two young people were dragged to the palace kitchens, killed, and their brains fed to the insatiable snakes on the king's shoulders. The pact was complete. Zahak was no longer just a tyrant, he was a walking plague, a monstrous king who devoured his own people to live. News of this serpent king spread across the land, a story of terror that overshadowed everything, and it reached the fractured, chaotic kingdom of Iran. The people, having utterly lost faith in their arrogant god King Jamshid, were desperate for a new leader. They heard of Zahak's immense power, his legions of soldiers, and they mistook his evil for strength. In a final catastrophic act of rebellion, they sent a message to the monster. They invited him to come and take their throne. Jamshid, the fallen king, the architect of paradise, was now a fugitive in his own land. Hunted, hated, and stripped of all his power, he fled. And on the horizon a new army appeared, marching under the black banner of a king with serpents on his shoulders. The golden age was over. A new era, an age of darkness, blood, and horror was about to begin. A reign of terror that would last for 1,000 years. The man who carried that banner was named Zahak, and he was not born a monster. He was the son of a good and generous king, a man of faith who ruled a distant land. Zahak was young, ambitious, and easily swayed. And it was this weakness, this crack in his soul, that attracted the attention of evil itself. The devil Ahriman saw in the young prince a perfect instrument for his dark designs. Ahriman came to Zahak's court not as a demon with horns and fire, but disguised as a charming, well-spoken courtier. He flattered the prince, praised his strength, his intelligence, his right to rule. He whispered poison into his ear day after day. He told Zahak that his father, the good king, was old, weak, and standing in the way of his destiny. Why should a lion like you, he'd say, be forced to wait for a frail old man to die? The throne should be yours now. At first Zahak resisted, but the whispers were relentless, feeding his pride, stoking his ambition into a raging fire. Eventually the poison took root. Ahriman laid out a simple, cowardly plan. They dug a deep pit on a path the old king walked every morning for his prayers, covered it with leaves and branches, and waited. The good king fell, and his reign ended in a dark, lonely hole, betrayed by the son he loved. Zahak, the patricide, was now king. His dark coronation was complete. Ahriman, his work seemingly done, prepared to leave. But first he said he had one small request. As a reward for his loyal service, he wished to place a humble kiss upon the new king's shoulders. Zahak, swollen with pride and eager to appear magnanimous, agreed. What harm could there be in a kiss? Ahriman stepped forward, his lips curling into a smile no one could see. He leaned in and kissed Zahak's right shoulder, then his left. The moment his lips touched the king's skin, the ground shook, and Ahriman vanished into the earth, his demonic laughter echoing in the hall. And from the exact spots he had kissed, two writhing black serpents erupted from Zahak's flesh. They were a part of him, a living nightmare fused to his body. In a panic, the new king ordered them cut off. But as soon as the blades sliced through their necks, they grew back, stronger and more ravenous than before. Zahak screamed in agony and terror. His reign had barely begun, and he was already living in a hell of his own making. As the court physicians despaired, a new doctor arrived, a man with dark, knowing eyes. It was Ahriman again, now in a new disguise. He examined the ghastly serpents and gravely announced that there was no cure. They could not be removed. They could only be pacified, calmed, and there was only one thing that would soothe their infernal hunger. the brains of human beings. Every day, the physician instructed, 2 men must be killed, and their brains fed to the serpents. Only this gruesome tribute would keep the snakes from turning on their host and consuming Zahak himself. And so the nightmare began. The price of Zahak's ambition was a daily blood sacrifice. This was the king who now marched on Iran. His reputation preceded him. A monster king, a walking horror fed by the lives of his people. The armies of Iran, who had once followed their glorious king Jamshid without question, now faltered. Jamshid's divine glory, the far that had protected him and his kingdom, had vanished the moment he declared himself a god. His words had been hollow, and his people knew it. His soldiers lost heart. His nobles abandoned him. The kingdom built over 700 years of golden prosperity crumbled in a matter of weeks. Jamshid, the Sun King, the master of the world, fled for his life. He ran and he hid, a fugitive in his own land, for 100 years. He wandered from city to city, from mountain to desert, always looking over his shoulder, a shadow of the man he once was. But Zahak's spies were everywhere. The Serpent King's darkness had seeped into every corner of the world. Finally, on the shores of the Sea of China, Jamshid was found. There was no trial. There was no mercy. Zahak, the usurper, ordered the once greatest king the world had ever known to be executed in the cruelest way imaginable. They took a saw and they cut him in half. The golden age of humanity ended not with a bang, but with the grinding of iron through bone. With Iran's king dead, Zahak marched into the capital and took the throne for himself. He seized Jamshid's treasury, his palaces, and his 2 beautiful sisters, Shahnameh and Arnavaz, forcing them to be his wives. The world was now his, and for 1,000 years he would rule it. 1,000 years of darkness. 1,000 years where virtue and goodness were hunted down and punished, while deceit and wickedness were rewarded. 1,000 years where every single day, the king's soldiers would seize 2 innocent young men from their homes and drag them to the palace kitchens. There they were killed, their skulls cracked open, and their brains served as a warm, bloody meal for the snakes on the king's shoulders. The dread was constant. No family was safe. Every sunrise brought with it the possibility that today would be the day the soldiers came for your son, your brother, your husband. But even in the deepest, most absolute darkness, a single candle can burn. The 2 men tasked with the horrific job of preparing the serpent's meals were secretly good men. Their names were Armail and Garmail, and their hearts broke with every life they were forced to take. They knew they could not stop the sacrifices entirely. To do so would mean their own deaths and the deaths of 4 men a day instead of 2. So they devised a desperate, courageous plan. Each day when the 2 victims were brought to them, they would kill only one. They would take the brain of that man and mix it with the brain of a sheep. They would then give the second man a secret path out of the city and tell him to run, to flee to the mountains and the deserts, and never return. Day after day they did this. One life sacrificed to save another. Over the years, a secret community of escapees began to form in the remote mountains, a people forged in defiance of a monster. They were the ones who got away, the survivors of Zahak's tyranny. This, the epic tells us, was the beginning of the Kurdish people. But this small act of rebellion was a secret. To the rest of the world, the horror continued unabated. Zahak sat on his throne, a monster ruling a world of fear. He believed his power was absolute, his reign eternal. But one night he had a dream. He dreamt he was in his throne room when 3 warriors appeared before him. 2 were old, but the one in the middle was a young man, radiating power and fury. The youth was dressed like a king and carried a strange, terrifying weapon, a mace forged in the shape of a bull's head. In the dream, this young warrior strode towards Zahak, swung the bull-headed mace, and struck him a shattering blow on the head. He then bound Zahak in chains, dragged him from his throne, and hauled him towards a great mountain, as a massive crowd cheered his downfall. Zahak awoke screaming, the vision seared into his mind. He summoned every wise man, every priest, every sorcerer in his kingdom. He demanded they interpret the dream, threatening them with death if they refused. Trembling, the wisest of his advisors finally spoke. The dream, he said, was a prophecy. A child was to be born, a man named Feridun. He would be the one to reclaim the throne of Iran. He would be the one to wield a bull-headed mace. And he would be the one to end Zahak's reign. The Serpent King was consumed by a chilling, paranoid terror. He was the most powerful man in the world, yet he was terrified of a child who might not even have been born yet. He ordered his spies and soldiers to scour the entire world. They were to find this child, Ferdowsi. The prophecy had given a clue. The child would have a connection to the lineage of the fallen king, Jamshid. And so the great manhunt began. Agents of the king spread out across the land, interrogating, torturing, and killing, desperately searching for a newborn baby destined to become a hero. Zahak was determined to find this child and kill him, to strangle destiny itself in its cradle. But fate is not so easily cheated. For in a hidden corner of the land, that very child had just been born. His name was Ferdowsi, and his mother, Ferdowsi, knew that the agents of the Serpent King were everywhere. Every shadow held a potential assassin. Every gust of wind sounded like a spy's whisper. She looked at her newborn son, the heir to the lost glory of Iran, and saw not a king but a target. There was no time to lose. Under the cloak of a moonless night, she fled, clutching the infant to her chest, leaving behind everything she had ever known. Her destination was a remote pasture, a hidden meadow where a wondrous cow lived. This was no ordinary animal. Her name was Barmay, and her coat was as colorful as a peacock's feathers. She was a creature of myth, and Ferdowsi prayed that myth could shield her son from a monstrous reality. She found the cow's keeper and begged him, "This child is the hope of the world. Hide him. Let him drink the milk of this magical creature, and protect him as you would your own soul." The keeper, seeing the terror in her eyes and the nobility in the child's face, agreed. For 3 years Ferdowsi lived in secrecy, nourished by Barmay's life-giving milk, growing strong and bright under the watchful eye of the herdsman. But Zahak's paranoia was a living, breathing thing. His spies were relentless. The dream of the 3 warriors haunted his every waking moment and twisted his sleep into a nightmare. He could feel the hero's presence in the world, a tiny heartbeat that mocked his absolute power. Word eventually reached the palace of a child of noble bearing, hidden away in a distant pasture, drinking the milk of a fantastical cow. It was enough. A flicker of a rumor was all Zahak needed. He dispatched his soldiers, a tide of iron and malice, to the meadow. But Ferdowsi's fear was faster than any army. A premonition, a mother's instinct, screamed at her that the sanctuary was about to be breached. She rushed back to the pasture, arriving just ahead of Zahak's men. There was no time for tears, no time for goodbyes. She snatched her son, now a walking, talking toddler, and fled once more. This time, her destination was even more remote, more desolate. The Great Alborz Mountains. There, on a windswept peak, lived a pious hermit, a man who had turned his back on the world of men. With a breaking heart, Ferdowsi entrusted her son to the old man's care. "Raise him," she pleaded. "Teach him the ways of kings and warriors. Tell him of his father, Abtin, murdered by the tyrant. Tell him of his lineage, of the glorious Jamshid. When the time is right, he will know what he must do." And then she left, a ghost vanishing back into a world ruled by a monster, her heart torn from her chest, leaving her only hope on a lonely mountaintop. When Zahak's men stormed the meadow, they found it empty of the boy. The child was gone. In a black rage, Zahak himself came to the scene. He saw the beautiful, peacock-colored cow Barmay, the creature that had dared to sustain his nemesis. Consumed by a furious petty hatred, the Serpent King slaughtered the magnificent animal and burned the entire pasture to the ground, leaving nothing but scorched earth and ash. He thought he was erasing a memory, but all he did was fuel a future vengeance. Years passed. In the thin, clear air of the Alborz Mountains, Ferdowsi grew into a young man. He was as strong as the mountain stone, as swift as the eagles that circled the peaks. He knew nothing of his past, believing the hermit to be his father. But a fire burned within him, a restlessness that the simple life of the mountain could not contain. One day, when he was 16 years old, he came down from the peaks and stood before the hermit. "Old man," he said, his voice echoing with a power he didn't yet understand. "I know you are not my father. My heart tells me I am meant for more than this isolation. Who am I? Who are my parents? Why do we hide in this desolate place?" The hermit looked at the young man, the boy he had raised as a son, and saw the unmistakable light of destiny in his eyes. The time had come. He told Ferdowsi everything. He told him of his royal blood, a direct descendant of the great King Jamshid. He told him of his true father, Abtin, a noble soul who was captured and brutally murdered. His brain fed to the snakes on Zahak's shoulders. He told him of his mother Farinak's desperate flight, of the magical cow Barmay, and of the Serpent King's dark reign that had smothered the world in a 1,000-year winter of fear. The words struck Ferdowsi like lightning. Everything suddenly made sense. The strange sadness in his heart, the dreams of fire and battle, the feeling that he was a lion trapped in a cage of rock and sky. The grief for a father he never knew and the rage at the injustice of his murder ignited a firestorm in his soul. The tyrant who did this still lives? Ferdowsi roared, his voice shaking the very mountain. He sits on a throne built on the bones of my father and countless others, and I am here hunting goats while the world suffers. No more. I will go down from this mountain. I will gather an army, and I will grind that serpent-shouldered monster and his throne to dust. The hermit, wise with age, counseled patience. Your anger is just, my son, but the time is not yet right. Zahak's power is immense, his armies countless. Destiny has a rhythm. You must wait for the right moment to strike. But down in the cities of Iran, the people's patience had finally run out. Zahak's evil had reached a new unbearable peak. One day a man, a blacksmith, stormed into the tyrant's audience hall. His name was Kaveh. He was not a noble or a warrior. He was a working man, his hands calloused from the hammer, his face etched with a lifetime of sorrow. His clothes were torn, and his voice was a raw cry of pure anguish. He pushed past the guards and stood before the throne, a place where no commoner dared to speak. "O king!" he cried out, his voice filled with a grief so profound it silenced the entire court. "I am Kaveh, a blacksmith. I have done you no wrong, yet your hand has struck me again and again. I have had 18 sons, king. 18. And 17 of them have been taken from me, their heads split open to feed the vile serpents that sprout from your flesh. I have only one son left, and now your men have taken him too. What justice is this? If you are a king, why does your rule bring only death? If you are a dragon, then say so we do not have to pretend this is a kingdom." Zahak was stunned by the blacksmith's audacity, but at that moment he needed something. He had recently commanded his nobles to sign a document, a proclamation testifying that he, Zahak, was a just, wise, and merciful ruler, that he had never committed an unjust act. He needed this propaganda to quell rising dissent. Seeing this powerful, grieving man, Zahak thought he could manipulate him. He ordered Kaveh's last son to be released and then, with a sickeningly sweet voice, he asked the blacksmith to add his signature to the proclamation. Kaveh looked at the scroll, filled with the flowery praise and false signatures of terrified nobles. He looked at the king, a monster masquerading as a man, and something inside him snapped. He let out a roar of pure, unadulterated fury. He grabbed the lying proclamation, ripped it to shreds, and threw the pieces at the feet of the nobles who had signed it. "You soulless cowards," he bellowed. "You have sold yourselves to the devil, and for what? To watch your people be devoured." Then, without a backward glance, he stormed out of the palace, his freed son at his side. Once in the marketplace, Kaveh did not stop. He took off his leather blacksmith's apron, the one stained with the sweat and soot of his labor, and he hoisted it onto the tip of a spear. He held it high for all to see. It was not a royal banner of silk and gold. It was the banner of the working man, a symbol of righteous anger and broken-hearted defiance. "Follow me," he shouted to the stunned crowds. "All you who have a soul. Let us seek out the heir of the kings. Let us go to Ferdowsi and put him on the throne. Let us tear this devil from his palace." A murmur went through the crowd, then a shout, then a roar. The people had found their voice. The single cry of a grieving father had become the battle cry of a revolution. The blacksmith's apron, raised on a spear, became their standard. The Dirafsh Kaviani, the banner of the people. News of the uprising spread like wildfire across the land, a wind of hope fanning the embers of rebellion into a raging inferno. And on a remote peak in the Alborz Mountains, a young man with fire in his heart heard the news. The people were rising. His people. The time for patience was over. Destiny was no longer waiting. It was calling his name. That call was the sound of a blacksmith's hammer, not striking iron, but striking a blow for freedom. It was the roar of a father named Kaveh, who had watched 17 of his sons fed to the serpents on Zahak's shoulders. When the tyrant soldiers came for his 18th and final son, something inside him finally broke. He didn't plead. He didn't bargain. He roared. He stormed out of his forge, seized the heavy leather apron he wore every day, stained with the soot and sweat of his labor, and raised it high on the head of a spear. This was not a banner of silk and gold. It was not the standard of a noble house. It was the apron of a working man. It was a symbol of everything Zahak had crushed: honest labor, family, and dignity. And as Kaveh marched through the streets of the capital, his voice a thunder of grief and rage, that simple leather apron became the most powerful flag the world had ever seen. People poured from their homes, from the markets, from the fields. The whispers of rebellion, once confined to the shadows, now became a deafening shout in the open square. A river of humanity began to flow behind the blacksmith, a torrent of pent-up fury finally unleashed. Meanwhile, in his palace of jewels and dread, Zahak felt the tremors. The snakes on his shoulders hissed, tasting the rebellion in the air. For 1,000 years, fear had been his greatest weapon, but now he was the one who was afraid. The prophecy of a boy named Feridun, a descendant of the murdered King Jamshid, haunted his every waking moment and twisted his dreams into nightmares of being bludgeoned to death. He had scoured the earth, killed countless infants, and yet the fear remained, a cold poison in his veins. Desperate to shore up his crumbling authority, Zahak summoned the nobles and grandees of the realm to his throne room. He didn't want their counsel. He wanted their complicity. He drafted a document, a magnificent lie written in flowing script, declaring him a just, wise, and benevolent ruler. It praised his reign as a golden age of peace and prosperity, and most importantly, it declared that after a thorough investigation, the so-called Feridun was a myth, a phantom conjured by traitors to sow chaos. He demanded every noble sign it, to lend their name and seal to his lie, making them all accomplices in his tyranny. One by one, the terrified courtiers stepped forward, their hands trembling as they signed the document. They knew it was poison, but the alternative was the kiss of the serpents. Just as the last of them was about to affix his seal, the great doors to the hall burst open. Standing there, silhouetted against the light, was Kaveh the blacksmith, his face a mask of righteous fury. He strode through the stunned assembly, the angry mob at his back, and marched directly to the foot of the throne. His eyes, burning with the memory of 17 dead sons, locked onto Zahak's. He held up his own son, the one he had just saved from the palace guards. "You, the master of this land," Kaveh's voice boomed, echoing off the marble walls. "Why do you feed my children to your demons? If you are a king, where is your justice? I am Kaveh, a simple blacksmith. I have harmed no one. Yet you have rained down upon my head an endless storm of suffering. You have taken 17 of my sons." He then turned his gaze upon the assembled nobles, his voice dripping with contempt. "And you soulless husks of men, your faces are human but your hearts are dust. You are selling your souls to this monster, signing this lie while the blood of our children stains his hands. May you be cursed for your cowardice." Before anyone could react, Kaveh snatched the fraudulent document from the king's minister. He ripped the lavish scroll to shreds, casting the pieces to the floor like confetti at a funeral. He took his last son by the hand and stormed out of the palace, leaving behind a throne room filled with a silence more damning than any scream. Outside, he raised his leather banner once more. The time for petitions was over. The time for war had begun. The story of Kaveh's defiance spread like wildfire, carried on the wind to every corner of the kingdom. It reached the Alborz Mountains, where Feridun, the boy from the prophecy, was no longer a boy. He was a young man, strong and swift, raised on the milk of the magical cow Barmay, and tutored by the mountain spirits. He descended from his secluded peak and made his way to his mother, Ferdowsi, who had hidden him all these years. He looked into her eyes and said, "The world is on fire with the name of Zahak. The people suffer. I cannot remain hidden while a monster sits on the throne of Iran. I must face him. Tell me who I am. Tell me of my father." Ferdowsi, her heart a mixture of pride and terror, finally told him the truth. She told him of his royal blood, of his father Abdin, a descendant of the great King Jamshid, who was brutally murdered by Zahak's spies. She told him how she had fled with him as an infant, hiding him in a meadow with the mystical cow, and then in the mountains, always one step ahead of the Serpent King's agents. Her story was a litany of loss, sacrifice, and a desperate burning hope that this day would come. Then she took him to a hidden cache. There, wrapped in cloth, was a weapon of immense power. It was an ox-headed mace, forged for his ancestors, a symbol of royal justice and might. "This was your father's," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "And his father's before him. It was meant to protect the innocent and strike down evil. Now it is yours. Take it and avenge the blood of your father. Reclaim the throne that is yours by right." As Ferdowsi took the mace, he felt not just its weight, but the weight of his destiny settling onto his shoulders. Felt right. Felt like coming home. At that very moment, the sound of a marching army echoed through the mountain pass. It was Kaveh and his followers. They had been searching for the prophesied king, the hope of the nation. When the blacksmith saw the noble bearing of the young man holding the ancient mace, he knew his search was over. Kaveh fell to his knees. "We have been guided to you, O prince," he cried out. "The people yearn for a true king. We have raised this banner of defiance in your name. Let us against the serpent king and deliver us from this long night." Ferdowsi looked from the blacksmith's honest, grief-stricken face to the hopeful eyes of the thousands gathered behind him. He looked at the humble leather apron, now the symbol of a nation's soul. He raised his ox-headed mace high, its polished head gleaming in the sun. The blacksmith's fury had found its king. The king had found his army, and the serpent king, coiled in his palace of dread, was about to discover what happens when a nation's hope is forged into a weapon. The march on the capital had begun. Zahak's spies had told him of the uprising, but the serpent king had laughed. A blacksmith? A leather apron for a banner? It was a peasant's joke, a footnote in the long bloody history of his reign. But the reports kept coming. The joke was spreading. The footnote was becoming a chapter. The small band of rebels leaving the Alborz Mountains was no longer a band. It was a stream, then a river, then a flood of humanity pouring across the plains of Iran. Every town they passed, every village that saw the leather apron held high, emptied itself. Farmers left their fields, merchants closed their shops, soldiers deserted their posts, all flocking to this new, impossible standard. The Rakhsh Kaviani, Kaveh's simple apron, was no longer just leather. It was adorned with jewels and silks donated by the people, shimmering under the Persian sun. It was a symbol of everything Zahak had tried to crush: hope, defiance, and the unbreakable spirit of a nation. It was the people's crown, and it was coming for the serpent king's head. Inside his palace, a fortress of black stone and whispered fears, Zahak's laughter died. 1,000 years of absolute power had taught him that fear was his greatest weapon. But now, fear was working against him. He saw it in the eyes of his own advisors, the tremor in the hands of his generals. This wasn't a rival prince seeking power. This was something far more dangerous. This was justice. So Zahak did what all tyrants do when their power begins to crack. He tried to rewrite reality. He summoned every noble, every priest, every powerful man left in his dominion to the grand throne room. He stood before them, the twin serpents on his shoulders writhing hungrily, their foul breath filling the air. He demanded they sign a document, a grand proclamation for all the world to see. It declared that he, Zahak, had ruled for a millennium with nothing but fairness and virtue. It stated he had never wronged a soul, never spoken a lie, never ordered an unjust death. It was a lie so immense, so audacious, it almost created its own gravity. The nobles, trapped between the monster on the throne and the rebellion at the gates, began to sign. One by one, they added their names to the great lie, their hands shaking. But as the scroll was being passed, a cry echoed from the back of the hall. A man pushed his way forward, his face a mask of desperation. His son had been chosen. He was one of the 2 youths whose brains were to be fed to the serpents that very day. He fell to his knees before Zahak. "O king," he cried, his voice breaking. "You speak of justice? You demand we praise your virtue? Then what of my son? What of the thousands of sons you have murdered to feed the demons on your shoulders? If this is justice, what is evil?" A silence fell over the hall, so deep you could hear the serpents hiss. For 1,000 years, no one had dared to speak such truth in this place. Zahak's face, a mask of regal authority moments before, twisted into pure rage. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. He simply gestured. The guard seized the man, dragging him away to a fate worse than death. Then Zahak turned back to the trembling nobles. "Any other questions?" he hissed. They finished signing the document in terrified silence. Zahak had his piece of paper. He had his official lie. But the truth was now marching on his capital, and it carried a mace shaped like the head of a bull. Ferdowsi and his army arrived at the banks of the mighty Tigris River, the final barrier between them and the Serpent King's capital. The city loomed on the other side, a monument to dread. But the ferrymen, loyal to Zahak, refused them passage. They demanded a royal seal, a permit from the very tyrant they had come to overthrow. Kava the blacksmith roared in frustration, ready to build 1,000 rafts. But Ferdowsi, guided by a wisdom beyond his years, simply smiled. He spurred his horse into the raging river. His generals and closest warriors, their faith in him absolute, followed without hesitation. The army on the bank watched in awe as Ferdowsi and his vanguard rode upon the water as if it were solid ground, a divine miracle that shattered the morale of the city's defenders before a single blow was struck. They entered the capital not to the sound of battle, but to the sound of celebration. The people, seeing their prophesied king walk on water, threw open the gates. They poured into the streets cheering, throwing flowers, their faces streaked with tears of joy. The reign of fear was broken. Ferdowsi rode directly to the Black Palace. He smashed the demonic talismans that guarded its gates with his ox-headed mace. He stormed into the throne room, the seat of 1,000 years of terror, and found it empty. Zahak was gone. The Serpent King, convinced the rebellion was a minor nuisance, had taken an army to India to quell another uprising. He had left his palace, his treasures, and his prisoners under the watch of his steward, confident in his invincibility. Ferdowsi, the boy who was supposed to have been killed at birth, now stood in the heart of his enemy's power. He found the dungeons where Zahak kept his most prized captives, and there he found 2 women of astonishing beauty, chained and tormented. They were the sisters of Jamshid, the great king Zahak had overthrown. Their names were Shahnameh and Arnavaz. Ferdowsi freed them, and in that moment he wasn't just a rebel. He was a restorer of order, a healer of old wounds. He took his seat on the ivory throne of his ancestors, the throne of Jamshid, with the 2 princesses at his side. The people of the capital rejoiced. A new king, a true king, had come. The long night was over, but as the celebration reached its peak, a lone dust-covered messenger burst into the throne room, his face pale with terror. He had ridden day and night from India. He brought news. Zahak's spies had reached him. The Serpent King knew his capital had fallen. He knew his throne had been taken by a boy named Ferdowsi, and he was coming back, not with an army of men, but with an army of sorcerers, demons, and all the foul creatures of the underworld who answered his call. The Serpent King, his rage a fire that could burn the world, was returning to reclaim his throne. Ferdowsi had captured the palace, but the war for the soul of the world had just begun. The ground itself seemed to groan in protest as Zahak's army approached. This was not a force of men. It was a tide of nightmares given form, a legion of divs and demons, creatures whose shapes defied reason, their eyes glowing with malevolent fire. They moved not with the disciplined march of soldiers, but with the skittering, unnatural gait of predators long denied their prey. The sky, once a brilliant blue over the liberated city, turned a sickly, bruised purple, as if the heavens themselves were bleeding. A foul wind swept through the streets, carrying the stench of sulfur and decay, a scent that promised not just death but damnation. Inside the palace, the celebration had died on the lips of Ferdowsi's followers. The cheers turned to whispers, the whispers to a chilling silence. Warriors who had faced down Zahak's elite guards now found their hands trembling, their gazes fixed on the city walls. They had fought men. This was something else entirely. This was the abyss, crawling up from the depths to swallow the light. Doubt, colder and sharper than any blade, began to creep into their hearts. They had followed a young man with a blacksmith's mace against a tyrant. But how could they follow him against the primal forces of darkness itself? Ferdowsi stood on the highest balcony, his gaze sweeping over the approaching horror. He could feel the fear of his men like a physical weight. He knew this was the true test. Taking a throne was one thing, holding it against the very architect of its corruption was another. He lifted the gurs, the ox-headed mace, high above his head. It was not iron and steel. It was a symbol, a promise forged in a blacksmith's fire and tempered by a mother's love and a nation's suffering. His voice, clear and strong, cut through the rising panic. He didn't shout. He didn't roar. He spoke with the calm authority of a man who had looked into the face of evil and had not flinched. He reminded them not of the monsters at their gates, but of the reason they stood there at all. He spoke of Kava the blacksmith, of a father's righteous anger. He spoke of the thousands of young men fed to the serpents, of a world suffocated by 1,000 years of fear. He told them that the darkness gathering outside was not a new threat, but the last desperate gasp of an old one. It looked invincible, yes. It looked terrifying, but it was born of one man's corruption, and it could be broken by the courage of free men. He wasn't asking them to fight for a king. He was asking them to fight for the memory of their brothers, for the future of their children, for the very soul of their world. As he spoke, a change occurred. The trembling hands steadied. The averted eyes lifted. The fear did not vanish, but it was joined by something stronger: resolve. They were not just soldiers anymore. They were a shield wall against the night. Zahak, riding at the head of his unholy legion, saw the banners of Ferdowsi flying from his palace, and a madness unlike any he had ever known consumed him. This was his city, his throne, his world to torment. He let out a shriek that shattered stone and curdled blood, a sound of pure, concentrated hatred. He didn't wait for a siege. He didn't command his army. He charged, alone, a spear of absolute malice aimed at the heart of the city. His demonic followers, swept up in his fury, surged after him like a breaking wave of filth. The battle that followed was not a battle for land or for power. It was a war between realities. Ferdowsi's warriors, filled with renewed purpose, met the demonic tide at the gates. Steel rang against chitinous claws. Cries of valor were met with the chittering laughter of things that should not be. It was chaos. It was slaughter. But for every man that fell, two more seemed to take his place, their faces grim, their hearts burning with the fire Ferdowsi had ignited. Zahak cared for none of it. He cut through the battle, friend and foe alike, his eyes locked on the palace. He was a force of nature, a hurricane of rage. He reached the palace walls and, with the power born of his dark pact, scaled them as a spider would, his fingers digging into the solid stone. He burst into the throne room, the very air crackling with his presence. The room was filled with the women of his former harem, including the two sisters of Jamshid, Shahnameh and Arnavaz, whom Ferdowsi had freed. Upon seeing him, they screamed, the old terror returning in an instant. Zahak's eyes, burning coals in the sockets of his face, fell upon them. His rage twisted into a possessive jealousy. How dare this upstart, this child of a cow, touch what was his? He lunged towards Shahnameh, his hands like talons. But before he could reach her, a figure blocked his path. It was Ferdowsi. He had descended from the balcony, moving with a speed and grace that belied the weight of his mace. The two enemies stood face to face for the first time. The boy raised by a mythical cow in the mountains, and the ancient king cursed by the devil himself. The air grew thick, heavy, vibrating with the power of these two opposing forces. Zahak laughed, a dry, rasping sound. You have come to die in my hall, little king? The serpents on his shoulders hissed and writhed, their black, lidless eyes fixed on Ferdowsi, their forked tongues tasting the air. Ferdowsi didn't answer with words. He answered with action. He swung the ox-headed mace. It wasn't a simple strike. It was the culmination of a lifetime of destiny, the physical embodiment of justice. The mace whistled through the air, glowing with an inner light. Zahak, ancient and powerful, was still taken by surprise at its speed. He threw up an arm to block, and the sound of the impact was like the cracking of a mountain. The duel began. It was a whirlwind of motion. Zahak moved with a serpent's speed, his every blow infused with dark energy. The snakes on his shoulders were not mere appendages. They were weapons, striking out with venomous fangs, trying to find a purchase, a moment of weakness. Ferdowsi was a rock in this storm. His every move was precise, defensive, waiting for his moment. He parried the venomous strikes with his shield, the force of them nearly buckling his arm. He dodged and weaved, the gurs a blur in his hands, a constant threat that kept the Serpent King at bay. The fight raged through the palace, a moving storm of destruction. They shattered pillars of marble, tore down priceless tapestries, their battle a scar upon the very symbol of Persian kingship. Zahak grew more and more frenzied. He was a being of pure rage, his power immense but uncontrolled. Feridun, in contrast, was focused. His anger was a forge, not a wildfire. It gave him strength, but it was tempered, controlled, aimed like an arrow. Finally, he saw his opening. Zahak, in a fit of pure fury, lunged, leaving himself exposed for a fraction of a second. It was all Feridun needed. He didn't meet the attack. He pivoted, letting the tyrant's momentum carry him past, and brought the ox-headed mace down with all his might, not on Zahak's body, but on his head, squarely on his helmet. The helmet, forged in demonic fires, shattered like glass. Zahak staggered, a deep groan escaping his lips. He fell to one knee, dazed, the world spinning around him. The serpents on his shoulders went limp, stunned by the blow. Victory was at hand. The 1,000-year reign of terror was seconds from its end. Feridun stood over his mortal enemy, the mace raised high, ready to deliver the final world-cleansing blow. The prayers of a generation, the cries of the souls of the dead, the hopes of all humanity were in his arm. He prepared to bring it down, to crush the skull of the monster and end the nightmare forever. But as his muscles tensed, a voice not of this world echoed in his mind. It was a voice of pure light and authority, a voice that commanded obedience. "Hold Feridun. Do not strike him down." Feridun froze, the mace trembling just inches from its target. He looked around, bewildered. There was no one there. The voice spoke again, serene yet absolute. "His time has not yet come. He is not fated to die by your hand. To kill him now would unleash a greater evil upon the world. You must not kill him. You must bind him." Bind him? How do you bind a force of nature? A king who commands demons? Feridun stared down at the semi-conscious Zahak, his mind reeling. He had won. The ultimate evil was at his mercy. And yet, a power far greater than his own was staying his hand, commanding him to let the monster live. He had the power to end the world's suffering, but he was being told that true justice demanded something else. Something stranger and far more terrifying. To leave the serpent alive but caged. The war was over, but the fate of its greatest evil was now a terrible, divine riddle he was forced to solve. The message from the heavens was clear, but it made no sense. How could justice be served by sparing the monster, who had fed the brains of a generation to his own demonic shoulders? Feridun, the boy from the mountain, now the savior of a nation, stood at a crossroads of cosmic importance. To kill Zahak would be vengeance, a clean and satisfying end. But the angel, the Sarush, had forbidden it. The command was to bind him, to imprison him, to make his punishment an eternity of living consciousness, a perpetual monument to his own evil. And so Feridun obeyed. He ordered the great chains of the blacksmiths to be brought forth. He had the Serpent King bound, hand and foot, a heavy iron collar locked around his neck. And then began the long final march of the tyrant. They dragged Zahak from his palace, through the streets of his own capital, the city that had lived in fear of him for 1,000 years. And the people came out to see. They didn't cheer. They didn't throw stones. They watched in a kind of stunned, silent awe. They saw not a king but a man broken and chained, his demonic snakes writhing weakly on his shoulders. They were witnessing the end of an age of darkness, a nightmare made flesh being led away into the light. Feridun led this grim procession east, toward the highest peak in the known world, the snow-capped volcanic giant Mount Damavand. This was to be Zahak's prison, not a dungeon built by human hands, but a tomb carved by God into the heart of a mountain. They found a deep, lightless cavern, a place where the sun had never reached. And there, with the strength of heroes, Feridun and his men drove iron bolts deep into the rock walls. They stretched Zahak's limbs, pinning him to the cold stone, crucifying him in the eternal dark. The chains were pulled so tight he could not move, could not stir. And there Feridun left him to the silence, to the dripping water, to the slow turning of centuries. He was left alone with nothing but his own thoughts, his own hatred, and the faint, agonizing sound of his own heart beating out the seconds of his endless punishment. The evil was not destroyed, it was contained. With the Serpent King entombed, Feridun returned to the world of men. He ascended the ivory throne that Zahak had defiled and placed the ancient crown of the Kayanian kings upon his head. And for the first time in a millennium the world could breathe. The reign of Feridun was like the first day of spring after a long brutal winter. He was the embodiment of justice and wisdom. He emptied the tyrant's treasuries and gave the wealth back to the people. He taught them the arts of civilization, not as weapons of war but as tools for peace. He restored the ancient rites and celebrations, and laughter was heard in the land once more. For 500 years Ferdowsi ruled, and it was a golden age. The world knew a peace it had long forgotten. And in this time the king who had known so much war found love. He married 2 beautiful sisters, the daughters of the king of Yemen, and in time they each bore him a son. A 3rd son was later born from another noble queen. 3 princes, strong and handsome, grew up in the light of their father's court. But Ferdowsi, wise as he was, knew that a man's true character is not revealed in the calm of a palace, but in the fire of a crisis. He needed to know the hearts of his sons, so he devised a test. As the 3 young men were returning from a journey, Ferdowsi used his divine power to transform himself into a terrifying fire-breathing dragon. He erupted from the earth before them, smoke billowing from his nostrils, his roar shaking the very ground they stood on. The eldest son saw the beast and immediately turned to flee. "A wise man doesn't fight a dragon," he yelled over his shoulder as he ran. He was a creature of calculation and caution, a man who valued his own skin above all else. The second son was bolder. He drew his sword, stood his ground, and shouted at the monster, "I am a warrior. I am the son of a king. I will face you, beast, and either die with honor or claim victory." He was a man of fire and fury, quick to anger and proud of his strength. But the youngest son, the 3rd prince, showed a different quality entirely. He did not run, nor did he draw his weapon. He looked the dragon in the eye, his voice calm and clear. "O mighty creature," he said, "turn back from this path, for we are the sons of Ferdowsi, the just king of the world. Do not stand in our way, or you will force our father's hand, and his wrath is something no being, not even you, can withstand." He used not fear, not aggression, but wisdom and diplomacy. He appealed to a higher authority, to reason. In that moment the dragon vanished, and their father Ferdowsi stood before them smiling. He had seen what he needed to see. He embraced them and gave them their names, names that would reflect their nature and seal their fates. To the eldest, the cautious one, he named Sam, from the word for peace and safety. To the second, the fierce one, he named Tur, the brave and reckless. And to the youngest, the wise and eloquent one, he named Rakhsh, from the word for nobility and reason. Ferdowsi was growing old. His 500-year reign was drawing to a close, and he knew he had to secure the future. He looked at his 3 sons, the product of his golden age, and his heart was filled with a father's love. He decided to do what he thought was fair. He would divide the entire world among them. He was the king of the world, and the world was his to give. He summoned his royal astrologers and mapmakers. They charted the lands and the seas, and Ferdowsi made his decree. To his eldest son, Sam, the cautious calculator, he gave the west, the lands of Rum, which we would now call Byzantium and Europe. It was a land of wealth, order, and established cities. To his second son, Tur, the fierce warrior, he gave the east, the vast, wild steppes and plains known as Turan, a land stretching into Central Asia and toward China. It was a realm for a restless, ambitious spirit, a place to be tamed and conquered. And then there was the heartland, the center of the world, the jewel of his empire, Iran. This land he gave to his youngest and most beloved son, Rakhsh. He gave him the throne of their ancestors, the land of light, the kingdom from which all justice and glory flowed. In his heart, Ferdowsi believed he had been just. He had given each son a kingdom suited to his nature. But a father's love can be a blinding thing. He did not see that in dividing the world, he had also divided his family. He did not see that in honoring his favorite son, he had planted a seed of poison in the hearts of the other 2. Sam, in his rich western lands, received the news, and he was not grateful. He was insulted. Tur, in the wild east, heard who had been given the heart of the empire, and he was not proud. He was enraged. The 2 older brothers saw the division not as fair, but as a slight. Rakhsh, the youngest, the baby of the family, had been given the crown, the throne, the homeland. He had been declared their father's true heir, and they were mere governors of the provinces. The careful, calculating mind of Sam began to churn. He saw an injustice that needed correcting. He sent a secret message to his brother Tur. "Our father has made a fool of us," he wrote. "He has given the legacy of our people, the throne of kings, to a boy. He has dishonored us, his elder sons. Are you a man? Are you a warrior? Or will you let this stand?" The message found her exactly as Sam had intended. It was a spark thrown into a barrel of gunpowder. Ter's fiery pride exploded into a white-hot rage. He sent a messenger riding back to Sam with a simple, brutal reply. "Why do we sit in our separate kingdoms and complain? Let us unite. Let us join our armies. We will march on Iran together. We will confront this injustice, and if our father and our little brother will not listen to reason, then they will listen to the sound of our steel." The pact was sealed. The two great armies of the West and the East were preparing to merge, to form an unstoppable tide of resentment and jealousy. And their target was the one person who loved them most in the world. Their own brother. Rakhsh, in his jewel-encrusted capital, knew nothing of this. He ruled with a gentle hand, his days filled not with war councils and troop movements, but with poetry, justice, and the simple joy of seeing his kingdom flourish. He saw the world through the lens of his own good heart, and assumed, as the innocent often do, that others saw it the same way. So when the first whispers reached the court, they were dismissed as rumor, as the bitter gossip of failed courtiers. An alliance? Between Sam and Ter? Against him? It was unthinkable. A joke in poor taste. But the whispers grew louder, carried by panicked merchants and grim-faced scouts. They spoke of a river of steel flowing from the west, and a storm of horsemen gathering in the east. They described the banners of his two brothers, flying side by side, a sight no one ever thought they'd see. The reports were no longer whispers, they were a roar. And the roar was headed for Iran. Rakhsh's heart, a vessel that had only ever known love for his brothers, was shattered. This wasn't a strategic threat, it was a personal wound, a betrayal so profound it defied reason. He summoned his generals and advisors. The room was thick with tension, the air smelling of oiled leather and righteous anger. His commanders, men who had fought for his father Feridun, were unanimous. "We must meet this threat," they declared. "We must raise the armies of Iran, and show these treacherous kings the price of envy. We will build a wall of shields and spears so high, their sun will be blotted out." They laid out maps, planned fortifications, and debated strategies. To them the path was clear. An invasion must be met with a defense. A challenge must be answered with force. But Rakhsh was silent. He looked at the maps, but he didn't see territories or tactical advantages. He saw the faces of his brothers. He remembered playing with them as children in their father's gardens, before crowns and kingdoms had poisoned their minds. How do you wage war against your own memories? How do you draw a sword against the boys who shared your father's knee? Finally, he spoke, and his voice cut through the war talk like a prayer in a battlefield. "No," he said, his voice soft but firm. "I will not raise an army against my brothers. I will not water the soil of our father's earth with the blood of our own family." A stunned silence fell over the council. His generals looked at him as if he'd gone mad. This was naivety, they thought. Suicide. "They march with swords," one grizzled commander argued. "You cannot greet a sword with an open hand." "Then I will," Rakhsh replied. "This is not a quarrel of kingdoms. This is a sickness in my family's heart. And you do not cure a sickness with a blade. I will go to them. I will go alone, and I will speak to them not as a king, but as their brother. I will remind them of our father's love. I will offer them my crown, my throne, everything they desire. If it is my kingdom they want, they can have it. A throne is just wood and gold. A family is priceless." His council begged him not to go. They pleaded with him, telling him it was a trap, that his brother's jealousy was a fire that could not be reasoned with. But his decision was made. He was not a fool. He knew the danger, but he believed, with every fiber of his being, that the bond of blood was stronger than the lust for power. He had to try. To do anything else would be to admit that love had failed, and that was a world he refused to live in. And so the king of Iran, the favored son of the great Feridun, laid down his crown. He removed his royal armor and dressed in simple white robes. He took no guards, no retinue, only a handful of attendants to announce his arrival. He mounted his horse and rode out from his magnificent city, not towards a battlefield, but towards his brother's camp, armed with nothing but hope. As he traveled, the land grew tense and fearful. The villages were empty, the fields abandoned. The shadow of his brother's approaching army was a blight upon the world. When he finally reached their encampment, it was a city of black tents and sharpened steel, sprawling across the plains like a dark stain. The air hummed with the energy of 100,000 men hungry for war. When the sentries announced his arrival, Sam and Tur were in disbelief, then suspicion. This had to be a trick, a clever ruse. But when Rakhsh was brought before them, alone and unarmed, they were taken aback. He looked so much like their father. He had the same kind eyes, the same noble bearing. For a fleeting moment, a flicker of shame, a memory of a shared childhood, pricked their conscience. Rakhsh bowed before them, an act of humility that stunned everyone present. "My brothers," he began, his voice clear and filled with a sorrowful love. "Why have you come here with fire and sword? What wrong have I done you? Our father, in his wisdom, divided the world. He gave me the heartland, yes, but he made you both great kings in your own right. This crown," he said, gesturing to his own head, "it has brought me no joy, knowing it has brought you pain. If it is this throne that stands between us, then I gladly give it up." He looked from Sam's calculating eyes to Tur's simmering rage. "I want no part of a world where brothers make war on each other. Take my kingdom. Take my treasures. Divide them between you. Let me live as your subject, or let me go to some quiet corner of the world and live in peace. All I ask is that you put away your anger. Let us not become a curse in our father's old age. A story of shame that will be told for 1,000 years." His words were so pure, so utterly devoid of pride or ambition, that they momentarily disarmed the two conspirators. Sam, the cunning one, felt a moment of cold calculation. Perhaps this was the easiest way. Accept the offer, take the kingdom without a fight. But Tur, the man of impulse and fury, saw things differently. He saw Rakhsh's plea not as a gesture of love, but as an admission of weakness. He saw the nobility not as strength, but as a trick to make them look like monsters. His envy, a beast he had fed for years, now rose up and consumed him. "You speak of peace?" Tur roared, his voice cracking with rage. "You, who sat on the ivory throne while we were sent to the wilderness. You, who received our father's blessing while we received his leftovers. Your smooth words are just another weapon. Another way to prove you are better than us." Sam saw his brother's rage and knew the moment for peace had passed. He subtly nodded, giving Tur the signal he craved. The beast was unleashed. "I will not live in a world where my younger brother is my superior," Tur bellowed. He looked around for a weapon, his eyes wild with a hatred that had finally boiled over. He saw the heavy golden chair that had been brought for him to sit on, a symbol of his own kingship. In a fit of mad, symbolic rage, he seized it. Rakhsh saw the murder in his brother's eyes. He raised a hand, not to defend himself, but to make one last desperate plea. "Brother, no," he cried. "Do not stain your soul with my blood. Do not bring this curse upon yourself. Think of our father. Think of God. Have pity not on me, but on your own name." But Tur was beyond hearing. He was an avalanche of pure, destructive jealousy. He raised the golden chair high above his head and brought it down with all his might upon his defenseless brother's skull. The sound was sickening. Rakhsh, the gentle king, the loving brother, fell to the floor of the tent, his white robes instantly blossoming with red. As the life drained from his eyes, he looked up at his murderer, a final uncomprehending question in his gaze. Then with a sigh he was gone. A terrible silence descended upon the tent. Tur stood panting, the golden chair dripping in his hands, his rage suddenly replaced by a cold, horrifying clarity. Sam looked down at the body of his brother, his grand political maneuver now a vulgar, bloody mess. They had done it. The unthinkable. They had murdered their own blood. But there was no turning back. To seal their crime, to send a message that could never be misunderstood, Sam the Clever devised one final act of cruelty. He drew his dagger, and with a cold, precise hand, he severed his dead brother's head from his body. He filled the beautiful head, the head that so resembled their father's, with musk and ambergris. Then he placed it in a casket of silk and jewels, and gave it to a messenger. "Take this to Feridun," he commanded. "Tell the old king this is the glorious son he so favored. This is the fruit of the throne he gave him." The messenger, his face pale as ash, rode for weeks until he reached the court of the aging king. He presented the casket to Ferdowsi, who opened it with trembling hands. And there, nestled in silk, was the face of his beloved son, Rakhsh. The world stopped. A silence fell over the court so profound it was like the death of sound itself. Ferdowsi did not scream. He did not roar. He let out a single broken sound, a whisper of a name. Rakhsh. He pressed the cold head to his chest, his tears falling on the lifeless hair, and then he fainted, falling from his throne like a felled tree. When he awoke, the light had gone from his eyes forever. He was no longer a king, but a vessel of pure grief. He had the head of Rakhsh embalmed and placed in a special mausoleum, and every day, he would go and weep before it. He tore at his royal robes, he smeared dust and ashes on his face, and he cursed the day he had divided the world. He cried out to the heavens, to God, his voice cracking with an old man's sorrow and a king's fury. "O Creator of all," he wailed, "let me not die until I see a descendant of Rakhsh, a new shoot from this severed tree, who will rise to avenge this crime. Let him be a warrior whose mace will shatter the heads of those two murderers. Let their kingdoms burn and their names be a curse upon the lips of men." His prayer was heard, for Rakhsh had a daughter, who had been secretly wed to a nobleman from Ferdowsi's own family, and in time she gave birth to a son. When Ferdowsi saw the child, it was as if a single star had appeared in his endless night. He named the boy Miniature. He took the child and raised him as his own, pouring all his remaining life, all his wisdom, and all his burning desire for vengeance into the boy. He taught him the arts of war and the duties of a king. He showed him the head of Rakhsh and told him the story of the betrayal, and Miniature grew strong and noble, with his grandfather's eyes and a fire in his heart that had been lit by Ferdowsi's grief. Word of Miniature's existence spread like wildfire, carried on the winds across the deserts and mountains, all the way to the lands of Som and Tur, and for the first time in their lives, the two brothers felt the cold touch of fear. They had what they wanted, the world, but they lived in a gilded cage of paranoia. They saw assassins in every shadow and heard whispers of revenge in the rustling leaves. The news of their nephew, now a mighty warrior raised for the sole purpose of their destruction, shattered their arrogant peace. "We were fools," Som said to Tur. "We acted in haste and anger. We have stained our hands with our own blood, and now that blood cries out from the earth." They decided to sue for peace. They gathered a treasure trove of unimaginable wealth, gold, jewels, horses, slaves, and sent it with a smooth-tongued envoy to Ferdowsi. The message was one of deep remorse. "We were young," it said, "and blinded by the devil's whisper. We have repented 1,000 times for our crime. Now we hear a new prince, Miniature, has risen in your court. Send him to us, so that we may treat him as our own son and beg his forgiveness. Let us wash away this blood with the waters of peace, and reunite your fractured world." When Ferdowsi heard this message, a terrible smile touched his lips. It was a smile without warmth, a smile of pure iron. He pointed a shaking finger at the envoy. "Go back to those two serpents," he commanded, his voice a low growl. "Tell them their words are lies and their gifts are poison. Do they think they can buy forgiveness for the murder of my son? Do they think they can soothe my heart with gold? They cut down the tree, and now they want to tend to the sapling? No. Peace will come when their heads lie at my feet. War is what they sowed, and a harvest of steel is what they will reap. Miniature is coming, but he does not come for your apologies. He comes for your lives." The die was cast. Ferdowsi, with the last of his royal strength, assembled the armies of Iran. He placed a helmet on Miniature's head and handed him the ox-headed mace of his ancestors. He gave him command of the greatest warriors of the age, men whose names were legends: Karen the swordsman, Sam the father of the yet-to-be-born hero Rostam, and many others. And as Miniature rode out at the head of this mighty host, Ferdowsi stood on the city walls, a blind old man, listening to the thunder of the hooves, praying for the vengeance that was his only reason to live. The armies of Som and Tur united to meet the coming storm. The clash, when it came, was apocalyptic. The earth shook, the sky turned dark with arrows, and the rivers ran red. For days the battle raged, a maelstrom of courage and carnage. But the army of Iran, fueled by righteous fury, was unstoppable. Miniature was a whirlwind of destruction on the battlefield, his mace rising and falling, breaking shields, helmets, and bones. He sought out his great-uncles. He found her first, who tried to flee the field like the coward he was. Manacher's horse was faster. He chased him down and with a single mighty blow sent Tur's head from his shoulders, avenging the first cut that had slain his grandfather Rakhsh. He had the head placed on a spear and sent back to Ferdowsi with a simple message: "One has fallen." Sam, seeing his brother's fate, barricaded himself in a fortress. But there is no wall high enough to keep out justice. Manacher's forces stormed the castle, and in the throne room, the final confrontation took place. Sam begged for his life, offering his kingdom, his wealth, his everything. Manacher looked at him with the cold eyes of fate. "You offered my grandfather no mercy," he said. "You shall receive none." He struck Sam down, and the second debt was paid in full. Manacher returned to Iran not as a prince, but as a conquering king. The people hailed him as a savior. He went before Ferdowsi and laid the heads of Sam and Tur at his feet. The old man reached down, his blind hands feeling the faces of his treacherous sons. A single tear, the last tear he would ever shed, rolled down his weathered cheek. His task was done. His prayer was answered. He took the royal crown of Iran, the Kayanian crown, and placed it on Manacher's head. "Rule with justice," he whispered. "Remember Rakhsh. Remember what envy and greed can do, even to the sons of a king." And with that, Ferdowsi, the great king who had defeated the serpent tyrant Zahak and ruled for 500 years, finally let go of the world. He died in Manacher's arms, his long tragic reign at an end. And so ends the tale of Ferdowsi and his 3 sons. But it is not just a story. It is a blueprint of the human condition, laid bare by the master poet Ferdowsi. This epic, this Shahnameh, is called the Book of Kings. But it is truly a book of humanity. It shows us that even the greatest among us, the sons of a world savior, can fall prey to the most basic and destructive of sins, jealousy. It is a timeless warning that the seeds of our own destruction often lie within our own hearts. Across these 10 parts, we have journeyed from the dawn of civilization, through the golden age of Jamshid, into the 1,000-year darkness of Zahak's rule. We have witnessed the rise of a hero, Ferdowsi, who freed the world only to see his own family tear it apart again. The cycle is relentless. Good rises, evil challenges it. Heroes are born, they triumph, but their own human flaws create the next tragedy. This is the central rhythm of the Shahnameh. The struggle is eternal. The fight between the light of Ahura Mazda and the darkness of Ahriman is not fought on some cosmic plane, but in the choices made by kings and commoners, fathers and sons. The Shahnameh is more than a national epic for Iran. It is a world epic. It is a mirror held up to us all, reflecting our capacity for incredible heroism and unspeakable evil, for profound love and bitter hatred. It reminds us that history is not just a series of dates and events, but a collection of stories about people, their ambitions, their fears, and the consequences of their choices. Ferdowsi spent 30 years crafting this masterpiece to preserve the soul of a people, and in doing so, he gave the world a story that will never die, because the truths it tells are as real today as they were 1,000 years ago. The Book of Kings is closed for now, but the echoes of its heroes, its villains, and its timeless wisdom will resonate for eternity.